My name is James Miller, and I am a third-generation hog farmer. Our family has worked this same 15 acres of land since my grandfather purchased it in 1952. The red barn with its weathered boards stands as a testament to decades of honest work, housing a specialized hog operation that has supported my family through good seasons and bad. My grandfather was a forward-thinking man, building the farmhouse where I still live and designing a unique electrical system for the barn with its own separate meter and specialized wiring that runs through various sections of the hog operation. Morning sunlight filtered through the old oak trees as I walked the perimeter of my property on a Tuesday in early May. The contrast always struck me as I moved along the fence line. My working farm with its practical, mud-spattered equipment on one side, and the pristine lawns of Whispering Pines subdivision on the other. Their cookie-cutter homes with matching shutters and coordinated mailboxes had sprung up just 3 years ago when Springfield Development purchased the adjacent cornfields from Old Man Thompson. I never asked for neighbors. For decades, our farm existed in peaceful isolation, the nearest house a comfortable mile away. The developers arrived with bulldozers and blueprints, transforming rural solitude into suburban sprawl in less than 18 months. Thank goodness for my grandfather. He had seen the direction the county was heading back in the 1980s and secured permanent agricultural exemptions and easements, legally protecting our farm operation from future complaints or zoning changes. The first wave of homeowners maintained a respectful distance, occasionally waving from their decks or asking curious questions about farm life when we crossed paths at the local hardware store. Most understood the compromise they had made. Country views came with country realities. That fragile peace lasted until Karen Whitfield purchased the corner lot that backed up to my eastern fence line. Karen moved in 6 months ago, bringing with her a platinum blonde bob that never moved in the wind, a collection of designer sunglasses, and her new position as president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. I spotted her the day after she moved in, clipboard in hand, standing at the edge of her property with her nose wrinkled in obvious disgust as she surveyed my farm. "Excuse me," she called out, waving her manicured hand to get my attention as I loaded feed bags into my truck. "Are you aware that your operation is violating several county ordinances?" I set down the feed bag and walked to the fence. "Good morning. I am James Miller. This farm has been here for 70 years, and we have all proper agricultural exemptions filed with the county." Karen tilted her head, her expression suggesting she was speaking to someone particularly slow. "Well, I have already spoken with the HOA board, and we agree that something must be done about the unsightly nature of your property. The smell alone is decreasing our property values." "I am not part of your HOA," I said simply, "and the county has confirmed our exemption status multiple times." Her perfect smile tightened. "We will see about that. There are health codes, nuisance laws. I am certain there must be something that applies. This is not what I paid for when I purchased a $500,000 home." As she turned and strode back to her house in her impractical shoes, I realized I was facing a new kind of threat, not drought or disease or market prices, but a woman with a clipboard and a vendetta against a way of life she did not understand or respect. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a conflict that would escalate beyond anything I could have imagined. The weeks following our first encounter established a pattern. Karen documented every aspect of my farm operation with her phone camera. She reported non-existent violations to the county inspector, who became so familiar with her complaints that he started calling me before driving out. "Got another one from Mrs. Whitfield," he would say with a sigh. Have to follow procedure, but do not worry about it. She distributed flyers to the subdivision about health risks of proximity to livestock operations and held an HOA meeting specifically to discuss mitigation strategies for the agricultural nuisance. Several of her neighbors actually reached out to apologize, explaining they had purchased homes knowing full well a farm was nearby and had no issues with my operation. The situation shifted dramatically one Tuesday morning when a gleaming 40-foot luxury RV appeared, parked deliberately at the edge of Karen's property line. The massive vehicle, with its chrome accents and tinted windows, was positioned to be as visible as possible from the main subdivision entrance. For 3 days, I watched Karen struggle with her predicament. Her prized vacation vehicle had nowhere to go. HOA regulations, WH. She herself had championed stricter versions of prohibited parking recreational vehicles in driveways or on the street for more than 24 hours. The irony might have been amusing if not for what came next. Walking my property at dusk to check on a section of fence that needed repairs, a flash of orange caught my eye. Partially hidden by decorative grasses and garden statuary were industrial-grade extension cords. My eyes followed their path from my external barn outlet, installed decades ago for occasional use of power tools when working on the fence line, directly to Karen's RV power hookup. I stood frozen in disbelief. This woman, who had spent months complaining about every aspect of my farm, was now stealing electricity from it. The audacity was breathtaking. That outlet connected to a specialized circuit my grandfather had installed that ran through the environmental control systems in the hog barn before reaching the exterior of the building. It was on a separate meter specifically for agricultural use, with specific voltage requirements for the sensitive equipment that maintained proper conditions for the animals. My first instinct was to march to her door immediately. The farmer in me, however, counseled patience. If Karen was bold enough to steal electricity in such a blatant manner, confronting her without evidence might lead nowhere. She would deny it, remove the cords temporarily, and likely escalate her campaign against my farm in retaliation. Standing in the gathering darkness, I stared at those orange cords snaking through the grass. The theft itself was outrageous enough, but there was something deeply personal about it. This woman, who wrinkled her nose at my livelihood and tried to regulate my farm out of existence, was now parasitically drawing power from the very operation she despised. I walked back to my house slowly, formulating a plan. The immediate satisfaction of confrontation would feel good for about 5 minutes, but strategic patience might yield a more permanent solution. The farmer in me knew that some harvests required time, and the best yields came to those who understood timing. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my grandfather's old farm journal in front of me. He had faced challenges from developers and newcomers as well, though none quite as brazen as Karen. His wisdom echoed from the pages. Defend what is yours, but do it with intelligence rather than just emotion. I closed the journal, knowing exactly what my next steps would be. If Karen wanted to steal from my farm, she was about to learn that farmers are far more strategic than she had given us credit for. First Light found me installing 3 trail cameras strategically positioned to document the electrical theft. These were the same cameras I used to monitor wildlife movement around the property, now repurposed to catch a different kind of predator. I positioned them in trees and fence posts with clear views of both the outlet and the path of the extension cords, making sure they were well hidden from casual observation. While I waited for the cameras to gather evidence, I researched local laws regarding utility theft. The statutes were clear. Unauthorized use of utilities was a criminal offense in our county, with potential for both misdemeanor charges and civil liability for damages. I printed relevant sections and placed them in a folder, beginning what would become a comprehensive case file. 3 days of camera footage exceeded my expectations. The memory cards revealed Karen not only maintaining the connection but upgrading it. Early morning images showed her replacing the original extension cords with heavier-duty industrial versions capable of carrying more current. Another sequence captured her adjusting the connection point and adding a power strip with multiple outlets. She was not just powering minimal systems, but expanding her electrical consumption significantly. "Well, I will be damned," said Bill Harrison, my electrician of 20 years, as he reviewed the setup. Bill had helped maintain the specialized electrical system my grandfather installed and understood its unique configuration better than anyone. "She has no idea, does she?" he said, shaking his head and adjusting his worn cap. "No idea about what?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "That circuit she is tapping into. It runs straight through your hog barn environmental controls before reaching that exterior outlet. Your grandfather designed it that way so the same circuit could power both interior systems and exterior needs when required." Bill knelt to examine the connection point. "She is drawing significant power. I can see wear on the outlet already." Armed with solid evidence and legal information, I decided it was time for a direct approach. The next morning, I walked to Karen's front door and rang the bell. She answered wearing tennis whites, her expression souring instantly upon recognizing me. "Mrs. Whitfield, I would like to discuss the extension cords running from my property to your RV," I said calmly. Her saccharine smile appeared immediately. "I have no idea what you are talking about," she replied, despite the orange cord clearly visible behind her garage not 20 feet away. "The industrial extension cords you have connected to my barn outlet to power your RV," I clarified. "They are on my property, using electricity I pay for without my permission." "That is absurd," she said, voice rising. "I would never do such a thing. Now if you will excuse me, I have a tennis match to attend." She shut the door in my face. That afternoon, 3 separate HOA violation notices appeared in my mailbox, complaints about agricultural equipment visible from residential areas, excessive noise during early morning hours, and failure to maintain aesthetic standards at property boundary. The timing made the retaliation obvious. What was even more surprising came the following weekend. A steady stream of vehicles pulled up to Karen's property, well-dressed couples emerging to gather around her RV. From my kitchen window, I observed what appeared to be organized tour, Karen gesturing grandly at features inside and outside the vehicle, visitors sipping beverages as they nodded appreciatively. Curious, I drove around the block and parked where I could observe without being noticed. Karen was conducting full sales presentations, complete with brochures and demonstration videos playing on a television she had set up inside the RV, all powered by electricity stolen from my farm. This was not just personal use. She was running an unauthorized business showcasing luxury RVs and travel packages. My frustration grew as I watched her business operation expand day by day. Other HOA members began joining her campaign against my farm, likely influenced by her position and persistent complaints. What they did not know was that their HOA president was building her business on stolen electricity and brazen lies. The battle lines were clearly drawn, not by me, but by a woman who believed rules applied to everyone except herself. As I updated my evidence folder with new photos and documentation, I realized this conflict had moved well beyond neighborly disagreement. It was time to consult a professional who could advise me on the full legal implications of what was unfolding. Experience luxury camping with picturesque countryside views. Read the glossy brochure I found attached to my fence one Tuesday morning. I stared at the professional marketing material in disbelief. The countryside views featured in the photographs were unmistakably shots of my farm, carefully angled to exclude the hog pens while capturing the rustic barn and rolling pasture in golden morning light. Karen's operation had evolved from occasional weekend showcases to a full-fledged business enterprise. Her website, listed prominently on the brochure, advertised luxury RV experiences at countryside estates, offering sales consultations, weekend test drives, and customized travel itineraries. The entire business model centered around the very rural aesthetic she had been fighting to eliminate. My electricity bill arrived that same week, showing a $300 increase compared to the same period last year. There had been no significant changes in my farm operation or personal usage to account for such a spike. The correlation with Karen's expanding business was impossible to ignore. On Saturday morning, I watched as Karen welcomed a couple interested in purchasing an RV similar to hers. From my position near the barn, I could hear her sales pitch clearly. The beauty of these luxury vehicles is they bring all the comforts of home to wherever you travel, she explained, gesturing broadly. Full climate control, entertainment systems, gourmet kitchen appliances, and you never have to sacrifice comfort for location. The prospective buyers nodded appreciatively as Karen led them inside, where I knew the air conditioning, refrigerator, and entertainment systems were all running on my electricity. Their test experience of the RV's features was powered entirely through stolen connection to my farm circuit. When they departed 2 hours later, Karen immediately welcomed another couple, then another. By Sunday evening, she had hosted 6 different showings, each lasting over an hour with all systems running. The electrical drain was substantial and continuous. The monthly Whispering Pines HOA newsletter appeared in my mailbox on Monday, and I nearly choked on my coffee when I saw the announcements. A special section highlighted a community business showcase exception granted to Karen's RV consultation business, allowing her to operate from her home despite HOA restrictions on home businesses. The same newsletter included pointed reminders about maintaining neighborhood standards, with photos that were clearly of my equipment. Though the farm itself was not explicitly named. The hypocrisy was staggering. Karen had managed to secure special permission for her business while simultaneously tightening restrictions that targeted my farm. The following day, I scheduled an appointment with Patricia Lawson, an attorney specializing in property disputes and utility cases. "This is not a minor case of borrowing power," Patricia said, reviewing my evidence folder. The trail camera footage played on her laptop, showing Karen's repeated trespassing and manipulation of the electrical connection. "This is clear-cut utility theft and trespassing, with significant financial damages." "What would you recommend?" I asked. Patricia tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. "We could send a cease and desist letter immediately, followed by legal action if she does not comply. However," she paused, studying the marketing materials I had collected, "I see she has a major event planned for next weekend. 20 confirmed guests, overnight demonstrations, substantial investment in marketing and catering." I nodded. "A weekend showcase for serious buyers. She has been promoting it heavily." "An event entirely dependent on power she is stealing from you," Patricia noted. "Before we proceed with legal action, you might consider documenting the culmination of her operation. It strengthens our position to show the full extent of the theft and business dependence on your utilities. Walking back to my truck after the consultation, I found another brochure tucked under my windshield wiper, a personal invitation to the luxury RV showcase, extended to all neighbors within viewing distance. The irony might have been amusing if not for the sheer audacity. The invitation detailed an elegant evening of RV luxury living, with overnight demonstrations available for serious buyers and promises to escape to nature without sacrificing comfort. Nature indeed, the nature she was simultaneously fighting to eliminate while exploiting for marketing purposes. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing my options. The legal path was clear, but Patricia's suggestion made strategic sense. If I acted now, Karen would simply deny everything, remove the connections temporarily, and find another way to continue her campaign against my farm. But if I waited until her showcase event, when her business operation was at its most vulnerable and visible to the entire HOA board, the evidence would be undeniable. My grandfather always said timing was everything in farming. Plant too early or harvest too late, and you lose everything you worked for. This situation required the same careful timing, patience followed by decisive action at precisely the right moment. As I watched Karen's husband helping her string decorative lights around the RV area, lights powered by my electricity, I began formulating a plan that would require perfect execution. A remote circuit controller, I asked Bill the electrician as we stood near the barn examining the electrical panel. Is that even possible? Bill nodded confidently. Absolutely. We install them all the time for farmers who need to manage power to outbuildings from their phones. Completely legal since it is your circuit to control. He sketched a diagram on his notepad. We install a smart switch at the source before the power even leaves the barn. You get an app that lets you monitor usage in real time and control when electricity flows to that exterior outlet. The solution was elegant in its simplicity. I would be able to see exactly how much electricity Karen was using, and more importantly, control when that power was available. No confrontation required, no arguments about whether she was connected or not. Just a simple technological solution that put control back in my hands. How soon can you install it? I asked. I can do it tomorrow morning, Bill replied. 2 hours max and the system will be fully operational. The following day, Bill completed the installation and showed me how to use the app on my phone. It displayed real-time power consumption in kilowatt hours and featured a simple on-off toggle for the circuit. I tested it several times, watching the power flow stop and start with the press of a button. One more thing, Bill said, lowering his voice though we were alone. Remember what I told you about this circuit running through the hog barn environmental systems first? I nodded. Well, when you cut power to the outlet, it creates a cascade effect. The ventilation fans connected to this circuit will stop as well. Just something to keep in mind, he added with a knowing look. That information sparked a memory. Years ago, my father had mentioned special feed supplements that old-timers used before modern odor control practices became standard. These additives, while perfectly safe for the animals, produced waste with a particularly pungent odor, so strong that most farmers had abandoned the in favor of newer formulations that kept neighbors happy. I called Patricia to confirm my plan stayed within legal boundaries. You have every right to control electricity on your property, she assured me. There is no obligation to provide consistent power to someone who is stealing it. As for the feed supplements, as long as they are approved for agricultural use and not harmful to the animals, there are no legal issues there either. With legal confirmation, I ordered the special feed supplements and began transitioning my hogs to the new diet. It would take 3 weeks for the full effect to develop, coincidentally, just in time for Karen's luxury RV showcase weekend. During those weeks, Karen's complaints about farm odors increased dramatically, though nothing had changed in my operation yet. Her timing was poor. Each complaint created a paper trail demonstrating her preoccupation with my farm, while trail cameras continued documenting her electrical theft. The county inspector, growing weary of her calls, finally told her, "Mrs. Whitfield, this is a working farm with all proper permits. Unless you have new information, we cannot keep responding to the same complaint." Karen remained oblivious to my preparations. Mass text invitations went out to HOA members about her upcoming showcase, one of which was forwarded to me by a sympathetic neighbor. "Join us for an elegant evening of RV luxury living. Overnight demonstrations available for serious buyers. Escape to nature without sacrificing comfort." The day before the showcase, I watched from my kitchen window as Karen transformed her backyard into a luxury camping display. Catering tables appeared, string lights were hung in decorative patterns, and professional signage was placed strategically around the RV. All of it connected through multiple extension cords to my power outlet, drawing increasingly substantial electricity as systems were tested and prepared. By Saturday morning, the power consumption shown on my app had tripled from its already high baseline. The hogs, now fully transitioned to the special feed supplements, were producing waste with odor potential that would be immediately noticeable if the ventilation system stopped operating. The weather forecast called for high humidity and temperatures reaching 90 degrees, ideal conditions for odors to intensify and travel. As afternoon arrived, the first guests began appearing at Karen's showcase in expensive casual wear. From my position on the porch, I watched them admire the RV, accept champagne glasses, and listen attentively to Karen's practice sales pitch. My phone rested in my hand, the circuit control app open and waiting. The farmer in me knew that harvests come to those who understand timing, and the timing for this particular harvest was approaching perfection. Twilight settled over the countryside, transforming Karen's showcase into a twinkling spectacle. String lights illuminated the area around the RV in a golden glow, portable air conditioners hummed steadily, and presentation videos played on mounted screens, all drawing electricity through the connection to my barn outlet. From my darkened porch, I watched approximately 20 guests in summer cocktail attire mingling around the illuminated space. Through binoculars, I observed Karen leading small groups on tour of the RV. She gestured grandly at luxury features, demonstrating appliances and comfort systems with theatrical enthusiasm. Occasionally, when showcasing the large windows, she would wrinkle her nose slightly toward my property and say something that made her audience nod sympathetically. The power consumption displayed on my phone app had reached record levels. The RV's air conditioning running at maximum capacity in the summer heat, refrigeration units keeping champagne chilled, multiple electronic displays, ambient lighting, and outdoor cooling systems. The combined draw was substantial and continuous. I waited patiently as the evening progressed. Karen had organized the event meticulously, with a specific schedule I had glimpsed on a planning document attached to one of her marketing emails. By 8:30 p.m., all guests had arrived, drinks were flowing freely, and several serious buyers had stored overnight bags inside the RV for the promised overnight demonstration experience. At 8:43 p.m., with humidity hanging heavy in the still summer air, Karen gathered everyone for her formal sales presentation. She stood framed in the RV doorway, champagne flute raised for a toast, her voice carrying across the yard as she began describing financing options and exclusive travel packages. That was the moment I pressed the button on my app. The effect was not immediate but sequential, a cascading failure that unfolded with perfect dramatic timing. First, the string lights flickered once, then died completely. The mounted screens went black mid-presentation. Inside the RV, the steady hum of air conditioning units fell silent as refrigeration systems powered down. Confusion spread through the gathering as Karen fumbled for light switches that no longer functioned. "Just a minor power fluctuation," I heard her announce with forced cheerfulness. "These systems have battery backups that will kick in momentarily." But there were no battery backups. Everything, from climate control to water pressure, depended on the connection to my electrical outlet, which now sat dark and powerless. The true consequence, however, was just beginning to unfold inside my hog barn. 6 weeks of special feed additives had prepared my 90 hogs for this precise scenario. The ventilation fans connected to the circuit gradually went still, no longer extracting and filtering the air from the barn. Without power to the exhaust system, the concentrated essence of my hog operation, multiplied by the specialized diet and intensified by the summer heat, began its unstoppable journey across the property line. The atmospheric conditions were perfect. High humidity and a gentle breeze from the east carried the unleashed farm aromas directly toward Karen's elegant gathering. Having grown accustomed to the smell over generations, I barely noticed it. Her guests, however, had no such adaptation. Through my binoculars, I watched the initial confusion over the power outage transform into something else entirely. A woman in a blue dress paused mid-sentence, her nose twitching slightly. A man in a golf shirt looked around, confused by the sudden change in air quality. Karen, still attempting to restart the systems, remained temporarily oblivious to the invisible cloud enveloping her showcase. Within 15 minutes, guests were exchanging glances, discreetly covering noses with cocktail napkins. Karen continued her desperate attempts to restore power, checking connections and reassuring everyone that normal service would resume momentarily. She was still unaware that the electrical problem was merely the opening act of a much larger production now playing out across her carefully orchestrated event. From my vantage point, I watched her growing realization that something beyond a simple power outage was occurring. Her head lifted, nose testing the air like a deer sensing danger. The look of horror that crossed her face when comprehension dawned was something I will never forget. The perfect moment of understanding that the farm she had been fighting against was now making its presence known in a way no complaint form could address. The first guest to break rank was a distinguished older gentleman who suddenly announced, "I seem to have received an urgent call," despite his phone being visibly inactive. He made hasty apologies before hurrying to his car. This departure triggered an avalanche of similar excuses. Women in summer dresses covered their noses with scarves while men checked watches and discovered simultaneous emergencies. Karen darted between departing groups, her practiced composure crumbling. "It must be temporary agricultural activity," she insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "The county requires notification before such operations. This is completely unacceptable, and I assure you it will be addressed immediately." Her reassurances fell on increasingly absent ears. One particularly memorable moment occurred when the HOA treasurer, a dignified man in his 60s, suddenly doubled over behind a decorative shrub and vomited violently, splattering his loafers. His wife guided him quickly to their vehicle without a backward glance. Through it all, Karen frantically checked and rechecked the power connections, jiggling cords and examining the RV control panel, as if sheer determination could restore electricity. The overnight guests retrieved their luggage with handkerchiefs pressed to their faces, abandoning the luxury experience they had paid deposits to enjoy. Within 40 minutes of the power disconnection, the showcase had transformed from an elegant marketing event to a complete disaster. Car doors slammed and engines started as headlights swept across my farmhouse. The exodus was nearly complete when my doorbell rang at precisely 10:17 p.m. I opened the door to find Karen on my porch, her designer outfit wilting in the humidity, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. Behind her stood three HOA board members who had apparently remained out of some combination of duty and morbid curiosity. "What have you done?" Karen demanded, her voice shaking with rage. "You have deliberately sabotaged my event with whatever disgusting thing you have done to your farm. Fix it immediately or I will call the authorities." I regarded her calmly. "I have not done anything to my farm. It is operating exactly as a hog farm has operated for generations." "The smell was never this bad before," one of the board members ventured, looking uncomfortable. "That is because the ventilation systems normally handle odor control," I explained, opening the door wider. "Would you like to come in? I have something you might find interesting." Their curiosity overcoming their discomfort, they followed me to the kitchen table where I had prepared a folder containing trail camera photographs, electrical bills showing the recent increases, and time-stamped videos of Karen connecting to my outlet. "Someone has been tampering with my agricultural electrical system by stealing power from it for the past month," I said, laying out the evidence methodically. "That circuit powers critical ventilation systems in my hog barn. When someone diverts that power for luxury RV demonstrations, things get unpleasant quickly." The board members leaned forward, expressions shifting from disgust to shock as they viewed the clear documentation of their president's activities. "These extension cords run from my property to Mrs. Whitfield's RV," I continued, pointing to the photographs. "My electrical bill shows exactly when the theft began and how it has increased as her business operations expanded." This is not what it looks like," Karen stammered, but her protests withered under the weight of the evidence. "The county prosecutor considers utility theft in excess of $500 a criminal offense," I added quietly. "My documentation shows we passed that threshold 3 weeks ago." The oldest board member, a retired judge, looked at Karen with profound disappointment. "Is this true, Karen? Have you been stealing electricity from Mr. Miller's farm?" Her silence was answer enough. 2 days later, a certified check covering 3 months of electrical theft arrived in my mailbox, along with Karen's resignation letter from the HOA presidency. The new board established a formal buffer zone policy that acknowledged and respected the pre-existing agricultural operation. Karen's RV disappeared from her property the following week. A month later, her house went on the market, listed by an agency from another county. The new HOA president, a retired farmer from Nebraska, made a point of stopping by to introduce himself and establish respectful communication channels for any future concerns. Sometimes I think about Karen and her luxury RV dreams, wondering if she found another neighborhood to conquer with her ambitions. One thing is certain: she learned a powerful lesson about rural life and property boundaries that no HOA handbook could teach. And to this day, not a single resident of Whispering Pines has ever plugged into an outlet that does not belong to them.